Good afternoon to everyone. So today we are going to discuss on how to create a project management plan or a project communication management. So what is a project communication management plan? It enables project managers to monitor and manage communication with clients, team members, and other project stakeholders. So it serves as the standard operating procedure for project communications and lays down in detail who's responsible for which type of communication, who needs to be looped in, and how the information will be shared. So kapag sinabi natin is standard operating procedures, it is a procedure specific to your operation that describes the activities necessary to complete tasks in accordance with industry regulations, provincial laws, or even just your own standards for running your business. Okay? So kapag sinabi naman natin who's responsible for which type of communication, so kung sino yung responsible ba doon sa communication na ire-relay or yung ire-relay nung gagawa ng project communication management plan. So if it's the project manager, the project sponsor, or the technical department, etc. Okay? So a communication management plan is usually created at the start of a project. So during the planning phase or during the project planning phase. So depending on the project, communication plans can either be simple or complex. So some projects may even need to appoint a public relations person to communicate updates and events to society at large. So sabi kasi dito, depending on the project, communication plans can either be simple or complex. So kung sinabi niyo yung project ninyo is ganun lang kasimple, di syempre, simple lang din dapat yung communication plan na gagawin ninyo. So kapag once na yung project ninyo is too big, syempre dapat complex yung communication plan na gagawin ninyo. So what to keep in mind when developing a project communication plan? So the primary goal of project communication is to bring a project to successful completion by managing how information is disseminated, feedback is collected, and people perceive the project overall. So to achieve that, there are certain considerations or elements to keep in mind, including first is the audience or stakeholders. So to keep in mind when developing project communication plan, you need to consider your audience or stakeholders. So who do you need to communicate with? Which individuals or organizations are likely to be affected by the project's outcome or execution? So depending on the project, stakeholders can include members of a cross-functional team. So customers, suppliers, contractors, the project sponsor, the project's advisory committee, executives, media outlets, government agencies, and even the public. So second is the information to be communicated. So pag sinabi natin information to be communicated is, take note of this. A communication is useless without the information. Okay? So take note of that, na hindi magiging effective ang isang communication kapag once na walang information. So what types of information do you need to communicate? Anong klase? This can include project risk management strategies, scheduling changes, project updates, and milestones, items for inclusion in a prioritization matrix, etc. So the main thing to remember here is that you will need to communicate a lot of information to stakeholders throughout the course of the project. So and yet, it's vital that you don't overwhelm them. So sabi dito na it's vital that you don't overwhelm them. So dapat yung information na i-communicate ninyo is wag maging parang exaggerated. Yung sakto lang, yung possible lang na na mangyayari. Okay? So kasi it's na kapag once kasi na ang isang communication is nagkakaroon ng overload ng information, hindi alam or hindi natin alam kung saan magpo-focus yung pinag-communicatean ninyo nung communication plan ninyo. So, sabi nga dito, it's vital that you don't overwhelm them. Okay? Thirdly, method of communication. So kapag sinabi nating method of communication, there are different communication strategies project managers can use to get the right message to the right person at the right time. So this is include methods and tools such as formal presentations, group meetings, status reports, meeting summaries, newsletter. You may communicate via an intranet. Okay, so the press section of your company's website or the dashboards in the project management software your team uses. So the key to effective communication in project management, guys, is to not feel pressured to use just one method. Okay? So pag sinabi natin itong mga formal presentations like the PowerPoint presentations, pag group meetings, definitely it is a face-to-face meeting, status reports, through charts, graphs, and so on, meeting summaries, newsletters. So these are the method of communication that you are going to use when you are going to distribute your project communication management plan. Okay, so fourthly, time and frequency of communication. So when should communication occur? How often? A communication cadence or frequency sets expectation right at the outset. So also having a communication schedule in place allows team members and other stakeholders to prepare for meetings and important report in advance. So that is why communication should be forwarded before the event or the meeting. Hindi pwede na gagawa ka ng communication ngayon, then today mo siya i-forward doon sa responsible person, 'di ba? So dapat kapag once na magra-route kayo ng communication is you need to forward it or you need to inform them before the event or before the meeting. Siguro 1 week before, 3 days before, 2 days before. Bakit? So that the responsible person, we need to prepare the agenda na nilagay ninyo doon sa communication ninyo. Kaya time and frequency of communication is very important when making or when creating a project communication plan. Okay? Sabi dito, how to write a project communication plan. So, step 1. So, the first step is you need to determine the team's communication needs. So, different projects require different communication plans. So, ask yourself, what does this specific project need to succeed? Okay? So, for example, a project in a highly regulated market may require someone from the team to regularly communicate with a regulating body. So, on the other hand, updating content on a company's website may require input from customers and material from contractors such as photographers and graphic designers. So all stakeholders may need an updated project status. So secondly, yung a quarterly newsletter like that. So determine the team's communication needs, sabi dyan. So what are the tips for identifying communication needs? So know what's involved throughout the project's life cycle. So consider all the tasks, activities, and resources needed from start to finish. So from there, you'll be able to identify the project stakeholders you need to communicate with. And the second tip for identifying communication needs is you need to get input from all stakeholder groups. So know their preferred communication channels or methods. How frequently they expect to receive updates, diba? So what are some example of these preferred communication channels or methods? So kapag sinabi nating preferred communication channels or method, these are phone calls, text messages, email, video, or social meeting, di ba? So, you are going or you need to ask the persons involved in the communication plan kung ano ba yung yung kailangan nila, kung through phone calls lang naman yung information, kung pwede lang namang i-text ninyo yung information na kailangan nila, or pwedeng social meeting kapag once na malaki-laki yung agenda ninyo, and so on. So, nakadepende lang yan. Mali nyo pala, i-inform nyo lang pala yung iisang agenda tapos magkakandak kayo ng social meeting. Kung pwede naman siyang i-email, kung pwede naman siyang i-text or whatsoever. Okay? So, you need to get input from all stakeholder groups. So, step 2, define the purpose of the communication. So, there has to be a purpose behind each communication event. So, if you're calling a quick huddle just because chances are you're disrupting people's ability to complete tasks. Okay? So, sabi dito, define the purpose of the communication. So, according to Britannica Kids, so there are 5 purpose of communication. Okay, so take note of this. There are 5 purpose of communication. So, what are these 5 major purpose? So, first is to inform. Okay, to inform. So, kapag sinabi natin to inform, this is an informative communication. Okay, so kapag sinabi natin informative communication, you are going to share knowledge to the people, or people share knowledge. Kaya nga to inform, di ba? I-inform mo yung tao. So you are going to inform or to share your knowledge to people. Kaya, so the first is to inform or informative communication. So second is to express feelings. Okay, so kapag sinabi natin to express feelings, this is an affective communication. Okay? Affective communication. Ulitin ko, to express feelings or what we call affective communication. So, if we say affective communication, people express their feelings about something. Diba? So, kapag once na mag-express ka ng feelings sa isang tao, affective, you need to affect the people, diba? In terms of information na meron ka, 'di ba? So, you need to express their feelings about something. Yung something dito yung agenda ninyo, 'di ba? Yung sa reports, 'di ba? So, kung ano ang masasabi ninyo, 'di ba? To express their feelings. So, hindi pa pwede na during a face-to-face meeting or parang mga meeting is hindi lang dapat iisa lang yung nagsasalita. Dapat magkaroon kayo ng social interaction sa bawat isa. Because parang magiging plain yung meeting kapag once na iisa lang yung speaker ninyo. That is why effective communication is very important in the communication process. And it is one of the major purpose of communication. Okay? Thirdly is to imagine. Okay? To imagine. Kapag sinabi natin imagine, it is an imaginative communication. Okay? So, kapag sinabi natin imaginative communication, you are going to invent situations that are created and shared. Diba? So, kumbaga, kaya nga sinabi dito, imagine. So, mag-i-imagine ka ng isang situation na kung saan pwede mo tong i-share doon sa ongoing meeting kung saan it is relevant doon sa agenda na tinatakal ninyo. Kaya nga imaginative communication. So, paano kaya kapag ganito? 'Di ba? Paano kaya, anong gagawin namin kapag ganito? What if ganito? 'Di ba? So, imaginative communication. So, fourthly is to influence. Okay? Pag sinabi natin to influence, it is a persuasive communication. Okay? persuasive communication. Kapag sinabi natin persuasive communication, people attempt to influence the beliefs or action of others. Okay? People attempt to influence the beliefs or actions of others. So, you are going to influence the belief or action of others kapag sa tingin mo sa sarili mo is you are right. 'Di ba? That is why between two people is kailangan nyo mag-meet halfway, 'di ba? So hanggang sa magkaintindihan kayong dalawa. So you need to persuade each other until mag-agree kayong dalawa. That's why you need to attempt to influence the beliefs or action of others. Na kung sa tingin mo is better yung idea ninyo is then i-persuade mo yung mga kasamahan mo hanggang sa ma-influence mo sila. That is why to influence or persuasive communication is one of the purpose of communication. So lastly is to meet social expectations. So kapag sinabi natin to meet social expectations, it is a ritualistic communication. Okay? So kapag sinabi natin ritualistic communication, people meet social expectations. Okay? So, hindi basta-basta na kapag once na mag-a-attend ka ng isang meeting is wala ka man lang dala-dalang mga information, wala ka man lang dala-dalang report, nandun ka lang as an audience, nandun ka lang as viewers, nandun ka lang na wala ka man lang, wala ka man lang, you are useless, parang useless individual within the four corners. 'Di ba? So, dapat during the meeting is kailangan mong intindihin yung agenda ng communication na i-forward sa'yo. And with that, you are going to prepare yourself. Kaya nga dapat, sabi ko nga, is dapat kapag once na magpo-forward kayo ng communication, dapat 1 week before, 2 weeks before, para makapag-prepare naman yung tao na pagko-communicatean ninyo. So, para ganon is magkakaroon ng social expectation during the meeting, 'di ba? So para ma-i-involve niya din naman yung sarili niya para makapagsalita naman siya and so on. Kasi iba naman yung mag-a-attend ka ng meeting, wala ka namang masasabi, 'di ba? So one of the purpose of communication is to meet social expectation or what we call ritualistic communication. So just to wrap up, the purpose of the communication is first to inform or informative communication, second to express feelings or affective communication, thirdly to imagine or imaginative communication, fourthly to influence or persuasive communication, and lastly to meet social expectations or ritualistic communication. So I have a tips for defining why you're communicating. Bakit ba kayo nagkikipag-communicate? So first, you need to identify what needs to be achieved. Diba? Kailangan yung, dapat, ano ba yung output na kailangan ninyo after the meeting? After the communication process and so on. So this can be anything, diba? This can be anything. But in general, every communication item should update or educate stakeholders and in some cases, obtain feedback. Diba? So, may mga tanong pa ba kayo after the meeting? May mga tanong pa ba kayo? Ano yung mga suggestions ninyo? Ano yung mga comments ninyo? Diba? So, you need to have feedback after the meeting. So, a virtual meeting prior to starting a project may be to discuss the project, answer any questions, establish rapport among stakeholders, and obtain their support for the project, di ba? So, sabi dito, a virtual meeting prior to starting a project may be to discuss the project. So first, you are going to discuss the project, ano ba yung scope and delimitations, objectives, statement of the problem, and so on. Then answer any questions if there are questions na related doon sa project or dun sa communication ninyo. So establish rapport among stakeholders. So rapport is very dispensable sa pag-build ng relationship between the company and the stakeholders, guys. So take note of that. And obtain their support for the project. Okay? So you need to gain their trust. You need to gain their support sa project ninyo. Hindi pa pwede na kayo lang yung gumagalaw. You need also the support of the stakeholders dun sa project ninyo. Okay? So, secondly, outline meeting or report agendas. So, kapag sinabi natin outline meeting or report agendas, a basic outline can ensure meetings are productive and don't veer off course. Okay? So, kailangan during the communication is dapat naka-outline yaan. Dapat comprehensive. Dapat yung mga agendas ninyo is lucid or clear. Dapat yung after the meeting is magre-report na kayo agad yung minutes of the meeting and so on. Okay? So, step 3 is just how to communicate. Diba? So, choose how to communicate. So, the communication plan also determines which communication methods or styles to use for certain communication items. Okay? So, tips for choosing how to communicate. So, keep team members in the loop without impacting productivity. So for example, you don't want to schedule a daily meeting or stand-up presentation for updates that can be communicated via email or the team's virtual discussion boards, di ba? So, wag mo nang kumbaga wag mo nang istorbohin yung mga stakeholders niyo or yung mga team members niyo kung yung kung yung information na meron kayo is just to inform for an updates dun sa project. Kung hindi naman na siguro kailangan ng face-to-face meeting unless otherwise kung ganon ka importante yung presentation na ipe-present nung project manager or the project sponsor. So sabi ko nga sa inyo, you need to assess or you are going to evaluate first the impact of the communication among the stakeholders, among the team members, and among the organization. Kasi nga, is, for example, ako yung one of the stakeholders, mag-a-attend ako. Tapos, 10 minutes ka lang pala magpa-present, yung updates lang pala ng project yung i-inform sa akin. Nag-conduct ka pa ng face-to-face meeting or virtual meeting. 'Di ba? May mas mga importante pa na dapat gawin namin, 'di ba? Over dun sa meeting na conduct. So you need to think the productivity or the effect of your communication dun sa mga stakeholders ninyo, di ba? So secondly, pick the best method for the audience type. So certain stakeholders such as the project sponsor may prefer phone or video conference calls over email or other communication styles. Okay? Certain situations call for certain communication styles. So when delivering job performance feedback, a one-on-one in-person meeting works best. So when celebrating milestone or conducting project post-mortem analysis, alam niyo naman na kung ano yung post-mortem analysis na yan, a group meeting is appropriate. So if your team is geographically dispersed or includes team members who are constantly on the go, a cloud-based communication system that works on any device is a necessity. Okay? Step 4. Step 4 is to determine how frequently to communicate. So not enough communication is bad for projects. Okay? So as is too much communication. So kumbaga sabi nga din, not enough communication is bad for projects as is too much communication. So, dapat yung sakto lang. Hindi naman pa pwedeng araw-araw kayo magkakandak ng meeting. Hindi naman pa pwedeng at the end of the year naman kayo nagkakandak ng meeting. So, case-to-case basis yan. Diba? So, as a project manager or as a project sponsor is you are going to assess the situation whether you are kung kailangan mo mag-conduct ng meeting, 'di ba? So, case in point, if you send too many emails, people may overlook critical updates because of a clogged inbox or too frequent irrelevant communications. So, take note guys na when you are going to communicate with the stakeholders or the team members of the project is dapat sa isang email is nandun na lahat. Hindi pa pwedeng day-to-day kayong nagsasend ng email because it will affect the 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 communication process, 'di ba? So for example, mag-a-update ako na sa day 1, 'di ba? Magse-send ako ng email sa inyo. Ito yung update. Tapos day 2 ulit, ito yung update. What if you are going to send emails sa mga stakeholders or the people involved in the project na siguro after a week lang kayo mag-update sa email nila, ganon. So, kasi nga, sabi nga dito, is, ma-overlook nila yung critical updates. So, that is why you need to determine how frequently to communicate with the people in the project. Okay? So, tips for determining communication frequency. So, the goal is to keep everyone updated. So, ang goal mo guys, ang goal ninyo is to keep everyone updated. So, Monday emails recapping what has been completed so far are okay. So, our weekly status reports carried out via a video conference call. So, the point is there are different ways to establish a feedback loop and get everyone on the same page. So, consider what works best for your team. So consider stakeholder preference. So the project sponsor may want to receive daily updates while the client may want weekly reports. May mga ganun kasi mga situations na yung mismong project sponsor is gusto nilang time to time ina-update sila ng mga project managers or daily updates while the client may want weekly reports, monthly reports, and so on. So step 5, you're going to assign communication owners and audiences. So the project manager is normally responsible for relaying information downwards to team members, upwards to executives and senior management, and all around to other project stakeholders. So some communication events, however, may have to be delegated. So these are the tips for assigning communication owners, guys. So first, you are going to clarify who's responsible for which communication event. So doing so establishes accountability and make sure owners have ample time to prepare. Diba? Kaya nga sabi ko sa inyo dyan, na make sure owners have ample time to prepare. So hindi kayo dapat basta-basta na nakikipag-communicate na ngayon na dapat ang meeting. Except otherwise na may emergency meeting, yung may emergency meeting, unexpected meetings, and so on. So secondly, identify the audience for each communication type. So send the right message to the right audience and no more. This is so you don't bog people down with unrelated and unnecessary information. So for example, kung ang project sponsor at project manager, then team members lang yung involved dun sa communication process. So wag nyo nang sendan yung mga people below them. For example, sa mga suppliers, clients, and so on. Diba? So you need to identify the audience for each communication. These are example of a project communication management plan. Take note of this. So the common pitfalls to avoid when creating a project communication plan. Okay? So may mga pitfalls to avoid when creating a project communication plan. So project communication involves a lot of moving parts, expectations, personalities, attitudes, and preferences differ between stakeholders and event with a throughout plan. So communication problems can still arise. So firstly is no clear meeting guidelines. So when different people come together to work on a shared goal, meetings are a necessary evil, but meetings are getting a bad rap, and for several reasons. So one is the lack of clear guidelines. So for example, when there are no clear action items or if you invite the wrong people to a meeting, the meeting will likely go around in circles and end up nowhere. So kumbaga paikot-ikot lang kapag once na walang meeting guidelines dun sa communication na ginawa ninyo. So you are just wasting the time of everyone in the process. Diba? So time which would be better spent actually working on the project. So clarify how meetings will be conducted in your communication plan, guys. So include details such as when to send an agenda and what is expected of organizers and participants post-meeting and etc. Secondly, lack of an alternate plan. So change is a constant in project management, which is why change management and contingency plan are necessary. So project scope changes may happen and timelines will have to be adjusted. So resource changes may become necessary, and sometimes there is nothing else you can do but go back to the drawing board and craft another plan. So remember that a communication plan, guys, is there to aid project progress, not hamper it. Once it fails to serve its purpose, forcing it to work instead of changing it. So simply because changing it can be difficult and time consuming. So it is never a good idea. Okay? So for example, sabi nga dito, once it fails to serve its purpose, forcing it to work instead of changing it, simply because changing it can be difficult and time-consuming is never a good idea. Okay. Over-communication. So too much communication is just as bad as none, or inadequate communication. So over-communication happens when you overload stakeholders, especially the key stakeholders. So with so much data that they fall into analysis paralysis mode. So making decision making difficult, 'di ba? So another is when you include people in email notification lists that share daily or weekly information not related to their work. When communication starts to get in the way of project execution, it's time to rethink your strategies. So na-discuss ko na yan kanina yung over communication. Tapos yung hindi naman enough na communication. So maintain project success with an airtight communication plan. So we cannot stress it enough, guys. Communication is vital to project success. And for communication to be effective, you have to have a plan. Okay? When you sit down to write your plan, remember the many variables involved. Medium preference, the stakeholders' position in the organizational hierarchy, attitudes and expectations, and whether you have a remote team among others. Only then can you start creating a plan tailored to the needs of everyone involved. So also don't forget, in communication, distribution is only half the battle. Equally important are confirmation. So confirming that the message has been received and understood, and the ability to pivot or even create a new plan when the situation calls for it. Okay? So any questions? Just comment your questions in the comment box, guys. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.